The Book of 1 Maccabees is a historical account of the Jewish revolt against the Seleucid Empire under King Antiochus IV Epiphanes, r. 175 to 164 BCE. This revolt was led by Judas Maccabeus and his brothers, and it ultimately led to the rededication of the Second Temple in Jerusalem, a key event celebrated as Hanukkah. 1 Maccabees and the Torah. 1 Maccabees is not part of the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, but it aligns with Torah principles, particularly in its emphasis on covenant faithfulness. The Maccabees fought to restore the observance of the Torah, which had been banned under Antiochus IV. Purity of worship. The defilement of the temple by Greek influences, e.g., sacrificing pigs on the altar, was seen as a violation of God's law. Leviticus chapter 11 verse 7. Observance of God's commandments. The Jewish resistance was rooted in Torah teachings that forbade idolatry. Exodus chapter 20 verses 3 to 5. 1 Maccabees and Hanukkah. The Book of 1 Maccabees provides the historical basis for Hanukkah, also known as the Festival of Lights. After winning back the temple in 164 BCE, the Jews cleansed and rededicated it. According to Jewish tradition, found in the Talmud, not 1 Maccabees, the menorah miraculously burned for 8 days on a single day's supply of oil. Hanukkah is a celebration of God's faithfulness in restoring true worship. 1 Maccabees and the birth of Jesus. While 1 Maccabees does not mention Jesus, it was written about 100 to 50 BCE. It sets the stage for the world into which he was born. Jewish nationalism and messianic expectations. The Maccabean Revolt strengthened the hope for a Messiah who would free the Jews from foreign rule. Many Jews, by Jesus' time, expected a military leader like Judas Maccabeus to overthrow Roman rule. Hanukkah and Jesus in the New Testament. Jesus celebrated Hanukkah, John chapter 10 verses 22 to 23, also called the Feast of Dedication. In this passage, Jesus reveals himself as the Messiah, a different kind of deliverer than the Maccabees. The political climate under Rome. The Maccabees established the Hasmonean dynasty, which later fell under Roman rule. By Jesus' birth, Herod the Great, a Roman-appointed ruler, controlled Judea, creating the tensions we see in the Gospels. One Maccabees provides crucial background for understanding Jewish resistance against foreign oppression, which shaped expectations about the Messiah. It connects to Torah faithfulness, explains Hanukkah, and indirectly sets the stage for Jesus' birth and ministry. The Book of 2 Maccabees is a theological and historical account of the Jewish revolt against the Seleucid Empire, focusing more on God's intervention, martyrdom, and faithfulness than on military strategy. It provides a deeper religious perspective on the events described in 1 Maccabees and emphasizes divine justice and resurrection. 2 Maccabees and the Torah. While 2 Maccabees is not part of the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses, it strongly reinforces Torah principles by highlighting fidelity to God's law. The book describes Jewish resistance to forced Hellenization, emphasizing obedience to the Torah even at the cost of death. 2 Maccabees 6 to 7. The importance of temple worship. The desecration of the temple by Antiochus IV Epiphanes is condemned as a violation of God's commandments. Exodus chapter 20 verses 3 to 5. God's judgment and deliverance. The suffering of the Jews is seen as a test, but God ultimately rescues the faithful, just as he did in the Torah, paralleling stories like the Exodus. 2 Maccabees and Hanukkah. The book provides the earliest recorded celebration of Hanukkah, describing how Judas Maccabeus and his followers purified and rededicated the temple in 164 BCE. 2 Maccabees 10 to 1-8. It emphasizes divine intervention. The victory over the Seleucids is credited to God's help, not just military skill. A call to future generations. Jews are encouraged to celebrate Hanukkah every year as a reminder of God's faithfulness. Miraculous elements. Though it doesn't mention the oil miracle, which comes from later rabbinic tradition, it highlights God's power and justice in protecting his people. 2 Maccabees and the birth of Jesus. While 2 Maccabees predates Jesus' birth, it provides essential background for the Jewish worldview at the time. Martyrdom and resurrection. The famous story of the 7 brothers and their mother, 2 Maccabees 7, expresses belief in bodily resurrection, a key theme in Jesus' teachings. John chapter 11 verse 25. This passage strongly influenced Jewish ideas about the afterlife, which were debated among the Pharisees and Sadducees in Jesus' time. Messianic hope. The suffering under Antiochus IV deepened Jewish expectations for a Messiah, but many still expected a warrior like Judas Maccabee. Jesus, however, presented a spiritual kingdom rather than a political revolution. Hanukkah and Jesus. The suffering under Antiochus IV deepened Jewish expectations for a Messiah, but many still expected a warrior like Judas Maccabee. Jesus, however, presented a spiritual kingdom rather than a political revolution. Hanukkah and Jesus. Jesus celebrated Hanukkah, also known as the Feast of Dedication, John chapter 10 verses 22 to 23. In this moment, he declares, "I and the Father are one," John chapter 10 verse 30, tying Hanukkah's themes of temple purity to his own divine identity. Two Maccabees reinforces Torah values, provides the theological basis for Hanukkah, and introduces ideas about resurrection and divine justice that later appear in Jesus' teachings. It bridges the gap between Jewish suffering under foreign rule and the growing hope for a true messianic deliverer, setting the stage for Jesus' birth and mission. The abomination of desolation prophesied in Daniel chapter 11 verse 31, 12:11, was fulfilled during the reign of Antiochus IV Epiphanes when he sacrificed a pig on the altar of the temple in Jerusalem and set up an idol of Zeus inside. This was a clear act of desecration against God's holy dwelling place, violating the commandments given in the Torah. However, the later tradition of the oil miracle, which is found not in one or two Maccabees but in the Talmud, was added centuries later. The Talmud, a collection of rabbinic writings, often blends history with mysticism and extra-biblical laws, which contradicts Deuteronomy chapter 4 verse 2, where God commands, "You shall not add to the word that I command you, nor take from it, that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God that I command you." By introducing additional traditions beyond what was originally given in the Torah, man-made laws began to take precedence over God's direct instructions. Jesus, Yeshua, himself rebuked this tendency among the Pharisees. "You have a fine way of setting aside the commandments of God in order to observe your own traditions." Mark chapter 7 verse 9. The temple was the dwelling place of God's presence, and its defilement by the pig sacrifice was an act of spiritual corruption. But Jesus, Yeshua, taught that the true temple is not just a building, it is our own bodies. "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." John chapter 2 verse 19, referring to his body. Paul also confirms this in 1 Corinthians chapter 6 verses 19 to 20. "Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price. So glorify God in your body." If sacrificing a pig on God's altar was an abomination, then consuming it and defiling our own bodies, which are his true temple, is just as much an act of desecration. Eating unclean foods like pork is not just about diet but about spiritual purity. Jesus himself upheld the law of Moses and never ate unclean food, and even Peter, after Jesus' resurrection, resisted eating unclean meats when he was given the vision in Acts 10, showing that the laws of purity were still understood as a reflection of holiness. According to biblical timelines and historical context, it is believed by some that the angel Gabriel appeared to Miriam, during Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights. This timing is significant because Hanukkah celebrates the rededication of the temple, and now God was preparing to bring his ultimate light into the world. Yeshua, Jesus, the true temple of God. Luke chapter 1 verses 26 to 31 records this moment. The angel Gabriel was sent from God to a city of Galilee named Nazareth, to a virgin betrothed to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David. And the virgin's name was Mary. And he came to her and said, "Greetings, O favored one, the Lord is with you." Gabriel then told Mary that she would conceive a child by the Holy Spirit, and that she would call him Yeshua, not Jesus, which is the later Greek translation, meaning, Yahweh saves. This aligns with the prophetic meaning of Hanukkah: rededication, light overcoming darkness, and God's presence returning to his people. Just as the temple was rededicated after being defiled, so too was Mary's womb set apart to bring forth the true, undefiled Messiah, the one who would cleanse and restore the world. The desecration of the temple under Antiochus IV was a real historical event, fulfilling prophecy. The oil miracle was added later in the Talmud, going against God's command not to add to his laws. The temple is a reflection of our own bodies, and just as the pig defiled the temple, consuming what is unclean defiles us spiritually. Jesus, Yeshua, reaffirmed the importance of keeping God's commandments rather than man-made traditions. Just as the Maccabees fought to purify the temple, so too must believers keep their bodies holy, rejecting what is unclean both physically and spiritually.